Breaking news, Major League Baseball is not going to start on time in 2022. Rob Manfred meeting with the media right now in Jupiter, Florida after the 5 p.m. Eastern Time deadline passed and the league and players failed to reach a deal.
Addressing the media.
I do not have to have this particular press conference in which I am going to cancel some regular season games. We worked hard to avoid an outcome that's bad for our fans, bad for our players, and bad for our clubs. I want to assure our fans that our failure to reach an agreement was not due to a lack of effort by either party. The players came here for 9 days. They worked hard. They tried to make a deal, and I appreciate their effort. Our committee of club representatives committed to the process. They offered compromise after compromise and hung in past the deadline to make sure that we exhausted every possibility of reaching an agreement before the cancellation of games. So far, the parties have failed to achieve their mutual goal of reaching an agreement. The unfortunate thing, maybe the most unfortunate thing, is that agreement, the one we've offered to our players, offered huge benefits for our fans and for our players. We have listened to the Players Association throughout the process. A primary goal of the Players Association has been to increase pay for younger players. I said in Orlando, and I'll say it again, we agree and share that goal. We offered to raise the minimum salary to $700,000, an increase of $130,000 from last year. We offered to create an annual bonus pool of $30 million for our very best young players. In total, we're offering nearly a 33% raise to almost 2/3 of Major League players, and we're adding more than $100 million annually in additional compensation for this younger player group. The proposal also addressed player and fan concerns about issues like service time and competition. Baseball would, for the first time, have a draft lottery, the most aggressive lottery in professional sports. Also, for the first time ever, we agreed to an incentive system to encourage clubs to promote top prospects on opening day. We also proposed that the first and second place finishers in Rookie of the Year voting in each league would receive a full year of service no matter how long they were in the major leagues. The MLBPA asked us to make free agency more robust. For the first time ever, we agreed to eliminate draft pick compensation, a change that the MLBPA has sought for decades. On the competitive balance tax, we offered a significantly larger first-year increase than in the last two agreements, bearing in mind that the competitive balance tax is the only mechanism in our agreement that protects some semblance of a level playing field among the clubs. The international draft would have more fairly allocated talent among the clubs and reduced abuses in some international markets. We also listened to our fans. The expanded playoffs would bring the excitement of meaningful September baseball and postseason baseball to fans in more markets. While we preferred the 14-team format, when the format became a significant obstacle, we listened to the players' concerns and offered a compromise by accepting the 12-team format. Finally, we offered a procedural agreement that would allow for the timely implementation of sorely needed rules like the pitch timer and the elimination of shifts to improve the entertainment value of the game on the field. And we agreed to the universal DH. So what's next? The calendar dictates that we're not going to be able to play the first two series of the regular season, and those games are officially canceled. We're prepared to continue negotiations, We've been informed that the MLBPA is headed back to New York, meaning that no agreement is possible until at least Thursday. As such, camps could not meaningfully operate until at least March 8th, leaving only 23 days before the scheduled opening day. The clubs and our owners fully understand just how important it is to our millions of fans that we get the game on the field as soon as possible. To that end, we want a bargain and we want an agreement with the Players Association as quickly as possible. You gonna do them or am I? Okay, Hannah.
I got two, so like the first one.
Well, you only get one.
Well, I'm gonna try it for a second. Okay, so this has been out there a little bit, this phrase, and I just wanted to be super clear. Was this your last, best, and final offer in a legal sense, or are you willing to say you're at impasse?
We never used the phrase last, best, and final offer with the union. We said to them that it was our best offer prior to the deadline to cancel games. Our negotiations are deadlocked right now, but I'm not going to get in. You know, that's different than using the legal term impasse, and I'm not going to do that.
If it's not your last, best, and final offer, why would they have accepted it? If they knew they could get something better later?
Yeah, look, I think that take it or leave it in a negotiation is not something that I think is usually productive. I think always at the end, there's a little wiggle room somewhere, and I think that we like to keep the idea that we're willing to go back to the table and figure out whether we can make an agreement.
What do you say to the fans who say they're fed up with both sides of this and the possible loss of revenue from them not buying tickets?
Ron, the only thing I can say is that from the perspective of the commissioner's office and the clubs, we are doing our very, very best to try to reach an agreement. Unfortunately, it's not something that's solely within our control. It takes two parties to reach an agreement, and we will continue to be committed to that process.
What timeline? I mean, is there another session potentially scheduled, or who goes first? The owners with the players, vice versa?
All I can say, nothing scheduled right now. And we made a proposal this afternoon. I believe, without exception, every topic we have made the last proposal. Every single issue in the basic agreement, we have made the last proposal. You draw your own conclusion as to who ought to go next.
When you guys are, weighing these offers with the owners and talking things through, how much, if at all, do you weigh the financial impact on people who aren't in the room, the workers at the stadiums who get affected, and obviously the fans? Yeah,
look, I think that the concern about our fans is at the very top of our consideration list, followed closely by places like where we're standing, where people's livelihood depends on baseball, spring training baseball, and certainly an important part of the calculus for us and for our owners. Hey, James.
Hey, Rob. Could you explain the league's position on why you say cancellation of games and why not, say, reschedule or at least make the hope to still fit the full season in?
Yeah, we have a first-time situation in terms of the loss of regular season games. We've never, since we've gone to interleague play every day, we've never canceled games. So if you think about the way that the schedule works, every single day you have an interleague series where those teams are not back together enough to make rescheduling feasible.
So do you think the pay, full pay and service time will now be something you have to negotiate with the union and players?
Yeah, I think that our position is that games that are not played, players will not get paid for. John.
Rob, obviously there were some good things in the deal for the players, including over a 20% rise for the minimum players, the minimum paid players. However, the CBT, how do you explain? It was 210 million, right? So you're raising it to 220 million. That's less than a 5% rise, and then it's repeated the next subsequent years at $220 million. So it's basically only a 5% rise over 3 years. You know, they would tell you that inflation is up 7% now. Their salaries have stagnated, and you know, obviously they wouldn't like that part of the deal.
Look,
how do you explain that?
Well, I think that it's important to look at the pattern of increases in the CBT thresholds over the last several agreements, and I think the proposal that we made is right in line with the type of increases we've seen in the past. I think you also need to remember that the last 5 years been very difficult years from a revenue perspective for the industry given the pandemic. So, you know, this is, and last, look, we have a payroll disparity problem. And to weaken the only mechanism in the agreement that's designed to promote some semblance of competitive balance is just something that I don't think the club group is prepared to do right now. Look, I didn't take, I know where the clubs are. I know they are 100% behind the proposal that was made and the decision to cancel games given where we are in the negotiation. Hey, Bob.
Progress made, we kind of made a deadline these last couple of days. Is there any thoughts about having another deadline in the future?
Look, we're in the process of, we went through a really long 9 or 10 days. We had a really late night last night and not a particularly productive day today. We need to regroup and figure out how we're going to move the process forward. That's the best I can do for you.
Hey, Rob, understanding that deadlines create urgency, you locked out the players to jumpstart the negotiations. It feels like real bargaining went on just in the last 24 to 36 hours. I'm sure people are wondering why not over the last three months or even longer to get to a point where you're not necessarily canceling games because there's some momentum here.
Yeah, I think the best answer to that question is the last 10 days. We've been here ready to bargain, full committees, owners, players for 10 days, and it got going 2 days before the deadline. You know, that's the best explanation I can give you.
Rob, is the sport in a more perilous position now than it was in '94, '95 because of the number of entertainment options that are out there, how easy it is for people to turn to a Netflix or anything on their cell phone?
Yeah, look, the entertainment market today is different than 1994. My deepest hope is that we get an agreement quickly, we're back on the field, and, you know, we get back into that market and compete effectively.
Rob, you've said many times you see yourself as a deal maker. You take pride in the previous agreements you've made. So how much do you see this outcome as reflecting on you as commissioner now?
Look, the difficult thing about this, if it was solely within my ability or the ability of the clubs to get an agreement, we'd have an agreement. The tough thing about this process is it takes both parties to make an agreement. I'm really disappointed that we didn't make an agreement, and I'm really committed to doing everything possible to get one.
You've been listening to MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred there talking about the non-agreement between the players and the owners there. Let's welcome back in Jim Bowden. A couple bullet points. They're canceling the first 2 series of the season. MLB is prepared to continue negotiations. Nothing is scheduled. In games that are canceled, Jim, the players will not be played. What are some of your takeaways from what we just heard?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway was I think Commissioner Manfred certainly laid out all of the things that the commissioner's office and the clubs have compromised on. He was very strong in pointing out that a lot of the narrative that the union had, they addressed. He talked about preventing tanking, service time manipulation, the universal DH, getting the younger players paid, increasing the minimums, creating a pool for the young 150 young star players that are not arbitration eligible. He made a really big argument on that side. At the same time, when he was asked a question afterwards, he was asked about why is the CBT proposal only a 5% increase from the previous CBAs. And he basically defended that position without talking about revenues. What he did was, hey, that's consistent with how we increase in the previous CBAs. But he didn't talk about how much the industry revenues have changed. And the problem with their CBT proposal is that it acts as a soft cap. And it stops the big markets from spending. It stops the New York Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Phillies. And, in his answer, credit to him, he did talk about, hey, we need competitive balance here, and we need that tax there to help some of these clubs survive. But the number, when you look at it percentage-wise compared to revenues, it's actually a worse deal for the players than the previous CBAs. And so I think, again, when we get a deal, I think you're going to find that particular number is going to go up to 230. I don't think you're going to see a deal in year one under that, Amanda. And so I think that's a really big deal. The other issue we didn't really touch upon is this $30 million pool from the Central Fund for the 0 to 3 guys. Although it is a new thing that wasn't in the previous CBAs, it's not even close to what the clubs wanted, $115 million. And finally, I think the last point that I have, and I think he made this point really strong. He said every single last proposal of the basic agreement, every single proposal, the last one came from the clubs. The players have not made a proposal on any issue in the basic agreement after the club's last proposal. I thought that was really interesting. But at the end of the day, Amanda, he said, look, yeah, we've canceled the first 2 series and the players aren't going to get paid for those games. But he was clear in saying we want to negotiate. We want to get a deal done. It was not a take it or leave it offer. Yes, the deadline is come and gone, but clearly they want to negotiate. They want to go back to the table. But as of now, nothing's been scheduled for the next bargaining session. And the union has left Florida and they're heading back to New York.
Jim, I'm glad you brought up that point, though, because it's something that I had made a note of here about the proposal, and it had come from the owners. And so far, we hadn't received anything from the players. And a reporter was asking him about this, and he said, basically, you guess who goes next and gets to bring a proposal to the table. Do you think we get one from the players? I mean, they're both taking a step back. We're going to have a breather here. What do you think we see next?
I think you'll see the players make a proposal. I would, and I'm guessing only, I would think that you would have a proposal by Thursday. And I would think you'll see a little bit of movement from the players from the 115 million, maybe down to 110 or 105. And that'll be, again, an incremental move that's going to do nothing in the negotiation. So, again, we have 2 big problems in this negotiation where it's going to take a lot of compromise. Right now, the clubs feel they've gone as far as they can go. They feel like they've addressed all the issues. And the union and the players side is saying, hey, we have this huge increase of revenues. The way we project revenues in the next 5 years, players are not getting their share, and we need more money in this deal. This work stoppage that we're going to have, because now we can call it, to me, a work stoppage because we're going to miss games, has to do with money, money, and money, because all the other issues, quite frankly, the clubs have compromised with the players. So we're not far from a deal, Amanda, outside of the fact that, we're a couple $100 million away of more compromising before we get baseball.
Yeah, just a little bit here, back and forth there. Jim, let me ask you this. I mean, we asked David Sampson. He said, look, going into this, I didn't think we were going to see baseball probably until May. We know we're not going to see the first 2 series of the regular season, and some of them were good ones there. You got the Astros and the Yankees, the Braves and the Nets as well. Here you go. Here are the series that we will not see at the beginning. Fans, Jim, fans want to know, when are we going to get baseball? Do you have any idea? Would you pick a month, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm not going to pick a month. I will tell you that when I talk to player agents, they've always looked at the month of April saying the clubs will never mind giving up April because the clubs don't get a lot of revenue. You've got a lot of bad weather. You get games postponed. Attendance isn't great. Kids are still in school. It's cold at the ballpark. The clubs make their money mostly in the postseason and mostly in the summer months after schools get out in the spring. There's not that sense of urgency financially from the clubs, and the clubs feel like you have more leverage when the players don't get paid. When the players, now they know they're not going to get their first paychecks. When they sit out, now they start to feel the pain. The clubs won't feel the pain until later in the spring, and that's why most analysts on the outside have always predicted that we'll get resolution in mid-May, something like that. But this is a different time. 2022 is different. And there's so many options from an entertainment perspective, with so many different options for people to have fun that the game can't lose the casual fan. The core fans are going to come back, but the casual fans matter for baseball. And so, we really need games to be played. So, look, I'm hoping both sides take a deep breath, take a few days off. They've been grinding for 9 days. They went till 4 in the morning, or a couple of them did last night. And look, at the end of the day, Amanda, baseball needs the game on the field. They need the fans. I remember the damage of 94 and 95, and it took 3 years for the game to come back, and it only came back because of all the home runs that Bonds and Sosa and McGuire were hitting. So the damage is going to be done here if these games are not played. I have confidence at some point that cooler heads will get back to the table, and we'll start seeing more progress. And I promise you one thing, when this deal is finally done, the CBT number, the threshold, will be much higher than what the clubs have proposed. And the pool for the 0 to 3 players will be much higher than the last proposal the clubs have made. And when those two things happen, I'll be on HQ with you, and we'll be celebrating the first spring training game.
Yeah, that'll be nice. We'll see when it happens, though. But as you mentioned, and Rob Manfred mentioned this, it's been mentioned on social media, there's a lot more ways to entertain yourself now than there was back in 1994. And as you mentioned, Jim, baseball needs the fans, and they're ready to have baseball back. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you very soon. So again, the word from baseball today, no baseball as of now. Officially, the 2 series at the beginning of the season, those have been canceled. You see there, some of them we would see a lot, like the Braves and Nets. Some of them we wouldn't see as much, like the Astros and the Yankees. We'll keep you posted what happens next. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.